guys, Corey here, the art archaeologist. So welcome to this Treasure Hunting Tuesday video of ink blots with acrylic paint. So this right here is a painting I did. It was one of my very first YouTube videos. I think it was like the third or fourth video I ever made. So I will link this below and you might want to mute it. I had very limited access to music, and so you can watch this be made though, and it's really fun to see this piece be made. So I'll link that below for you. And I learned this technique from a YouTube artist here named Gerda Lipski, and I will hunt up her video and link it below as well. She is an artist that I've followed for a long time here on YouTube, and she did a really stunning video of these ink blots. They're based, of course, on the work of Rorschach, the psychiatrist. So that's where these came from. And I just happen to think that they're one of the most amazing art forms that a person can paint. So here's this one here. Now, the reason I'm doing a Treasure Hunting Tuesday on this is because I recently, I think just yesterday or the day before, got a question. The person asked me, it was MS Montana, hi MS Montana, if they could use acrylic paints with this technique. So here's my full and complete answer, because ever since I got asked this question, I've been turning it around in my head, wondering just what's possible with this technique. Now this one here is done on glossy photo paper. You've got to have glossy photo paper for this to be the most effective. For you to get the results I got, then it's best to use what I used. If you use a really absorbent paper, the paint will absorb into the paper before it has an opportunity to move around like it did here. So you could probably use Yupo. I am probably going to try this on Yupo in the near future, and of course I will film it and bring you along for that. But this is the kind of photo paper that I use for this. It's a gloss photo paper. This is Printworks brand, and I got this at Walmart, and I got it a long time ago, and I went and looked for it again, and I did not have the Printworks in my head when I was re-shopping for this photo paper. So they for sure changed the packaging because I couldn't find it. So it's a great gloss photo paper. Now, I tried this Kodak picture paper and I did not get good results on this. It could be because it's a soft gloss. You know, you might want to get a real high gloss. So my best advice to you is to experiment, like always, and like with everything. So I wrote, back when I did these videos, I tried a few different kinds of paper, and my best results were on this Printworks here. So I think a high quality paper is probably going to give you, I was really, actually, I shouldn't say that, because Kodak's pretty high quality, and I got terrible results with this. It really didn't work well. So, you know, use what you've got. I always like to use what I have before I go out and collect more stuff that I may not need, of course. So, now back to the acrylics. I kind of bounce around, sorry about that. This all is done with watercolor, guys, okay? This is watercolor on these pictures here. I've only ever done this with watercolor. Here is my full answer for acrylics. Today we're going to try high fluid, the high flow acrylics from Golden, and then I'm going to try a couple fluid colors from Golden. And I'm also going to try a heavy bodied carbon black from Golden. I am not real attracted to doing it with heavy bodied, and if I were to do it with heavy bodied like we're going to try today, I would only do it with Golden or an equally high quality, heavy bodied acrylic. And the reason why is if you try to do this with craft paint, the cheap little craft acrylics, or any kind of acrylic paint that is not high end, the binders are already of a lower quality in that paint because it's at a lower price point. So it totally makes sense for that to happen, right? Well, this technique requires a lot of water. The more water you mix with your paint, the more the chemistry of the binders is broken down. So you could do this and have excellent results with cheap craft paint. You really could. But then a year from now, your paint is falling off of the paper. Why is that? Because the chemistry was not strong enough to begin with to handle all the water. So you can try it, of course, I mean, by all means, but I personally will not even waste my time doing this with lower quality acrylics, and that's why. Okay, kind of a long explanation, but you know, I've been doing art for quite a while and I know how acrylics behave, and you can really get into trouble if you start tearing the binders down a lot. Now, something else you could try is you could use like a matte medium or a Floetrol or something like that to kind of add a binder in to your craft paint, but I wouldn't bother with it. I just wouldn't bother with it myself. Now, these are the watercolors I used on these prints here. These have been around for 3 years now, at least, I think. And these are framed, so they're in really good shape. But I have some that are not framed that are in just as good of shape as these. And I used my Sonnet watercolor set here. And I got this on eBay, so it's not a huge high price point on these paints. But it's also not like a real student grade low price point either. It's a mid-grade watercolor, and I am ecstatic with my results on these from the Sonnets. Okay, so we're gonna check it out today with the Goldens, and I think I'm gonna be ecstatic about that too. So I'm really grateful for the question because I've been turning it around in my head for the last day. Hey, could you, couldn't you, what would happen? And I went through the Rolodex of my brain and came up with all the answers that I could come up with. Now, another thing that you could use that I think would be extremely, get you really excellent results is ink. You know, your Bombay inks, any kind of India ink would work great with this technique because the pigments are so thick in ink, and you can you know, mix inks with a little bit of water just like you can watercolors, and you don't pay this huge gigantic price of breaking down the chemistry. So enough said about that. I just wanted to make sure I gave a very thorough explanation. Sometimes I'm a little too thorough, but anyway, onward. So these are my favorites from this set that I did. And I did all these for an art show that I was in a few years back. So I wanted to share with you some of these because I did not film a lot of these. So this one kind of looks like a skull to me right here, like this weird moth or butterfly with a skull print on it. Now this one, the reason I wanted to show you this, I call this my alien bug. I think it looks like an alien bug. I did show these in a slideshow of the art show art that I did, and I will link that one too because I did make a video of that. But what's really cool is you can take this and do just an isolated picture, okay? Or you can cover your whole page with color like I've done here. So you can really go wild experimenting with this technique. Now this ended up being I ended up with a few like this, and I call them my ancient moths because to me this looks like something that you know, flew the earth millions of years ago, and it just reminds me of ancient times. I think it's the coloring. I don't know what it is, but I really love these. And then I did the antennas on purpose and, you know, played around with it. Gerda's video on these is exceptional. She's a master experimenter like a lot of YouTube artists are. And the ones that she came up with, she has a really strong grasp on mixing watercolor colors. And the colors she mixed up for her video, I don't know what they are. I haven't seen it in so long, but her color choices are really phenomenal. And that's another reason to be using watercolor, because watercolor is the easiest to mix up different colors with. So there's so many pluses to using watercolor for this technique. I call this my psychedelic turtle. That's what it looks like to me. Of course, the head and the tail and the little feet poking out. And you could just get the funnest results. Now this one to me really looks like an elephant. Here's the ears and the trunk, and then the legs. The body is kind of in the back. So you end up with all of these mystical creature pictures doing this technique, which I get great joy from. This is right up my alley of the kind of artwork that I like to do. So I wanted to show you these littler ones. I've got a few of these. I have a bunch of them that I made for the show, but I only brought out a few to show you. So now this is my little bear, and here's the nostrils. Here's the eyes, and then here's the little one of the claws off of the front, and he's like kneeling in front of you. Here's his little ears. This is my guy's favorite one, so it belongs to him. I borrowed it for the video. Now this is my favorite one here. This is my another ancient moth, and this piece right here, I was just completely in awe with how this part came out, and then this little circle here. This to me looks like something drawn on a cave wall. So this is my absolute favorite one. I like this one even better than the blue butterfly, and that's saying a lot because I love that one too. And sometimes this is another finish that can be very easy to overwork. So you'll know it after you do a few of these. You'll know if you've gone too far. You will get a gauge for it. So just give yourself an opportunity to play. Here's another one of, you know, those of you who watch me regularly, one of my favorite color combos is blue and brown. And this is much more of a turquoise and brown, but this color palette is, these are the kind of colors that I really gravitate towards in my artwork. I'm very much of an earth tone color palette person, and I love jewel tones too. So you'll see a lot of that here on this channel. But I went ahead on, let me move this real quick. I went ahead and took my full size 8.5 by 11 inch gloss photo paper, and I just cut 2 sheets down in half. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do one long ways like so. And you can do a full sheet. Now, if you do a full sheet, it's the bigger the artwork, it's kind of tougher to pull off. It's easier to manage a smaller one. So I wanted to show you this right here is I just put a little bit of the carbon black in this well, and then I filled it almost completely with water to get a really inky consistency with this black. And of course the Goldens have great binders to begin with. The best I've ever seen of anything I've ever used. So you've got that going for you. These are this here is the raw umber fluid acrylic, and again I put a lot of water in here to get it pretty inky, and it's still a little too thick for my liking. And then this here is the iridescent bronze, and the colors are really separating, so every time you go to use this color, you're gonna have to mix it all together to get that consistent bronzy color, okay? Which to me is a con. I don't want to have to stop and mix this up every time I use it. So these here are, I've got sepia high flow acrylic here. I've got nickel azo, quinacridone nickel azo gold here. And then I've got ultramarine blue here. And these are high flow, but they're even still too thick. So what I would do is just oh so carefully add a little bit of water to each one. I have not added any binders to any of these. So another issue with this is using acrylics that I find to be a pain in the butt is you're having to use a different brush for each color. That's another pro in favor of watercolors, because all you have to do is rinse the same brush and just use, you know, one, maybe two brushes tops with watercolor. So as I'm going along doing this little video here, I'm learning, you know, myself, because it didn't occur to me to use acrylics until I was asked. So I'm so grateful to get your guys' questions and comments. Please ask away. And if you've got a better way of doing stuff, I learn stuff from you guys just as much as I show you. So it's really cool for me. It's fun for me to get the comments. Okay, so now I've got it all mixed up, and let's go ahead and get into this. Okay, I went ahead and set this up so that you could see all the colors that I went over so that you know what I'm using. Another tool I love to use for this technique is my bone folder, which I cannot find right now. So I'm just going to settle for my palette knife. And what you want to do with this is you can, I'll just show you. Let's get started. I'm going to go with this, let's start with this blue. I'm going to get my brush really, really wet. And you want to work a little section at a time with this technique. That's a pretty big section, but we'll go with it. And if you don't get enough water, it won't transfer to the other side equally. And it takes a little bit of getting started with this technique. See that, how it stuck to the page? You can also tear your paper. I have torn my paper in the past. Now I forget which brush goes to what. This looks like nickel azo. Let's add a little nickel azo in here. But you really do need to work quite wet. Oh, that's lovely. So let's go ahead and add a little bit more of this nickel azo here. I'm gonna put some of it right here. Now another thing with watercolor is you could reactivate what you've already done. And I'm see how that blue underneath is not moving now? It looks like with the acrylics, once it's dry, it's a done deal. So the palette knife comes in handy, or your bone folder, because you can move that paint around. You can use your finger. Gerda used her finger in the video, but if you're gonna make a bunch of these, your fingers will be really sore by the end of the day, I would guess. So already I've got some tears in my paper here from keeping it closed too long. So these acrylics are drying really, really fast, which means you've got to work really, really fast. And then up here, I had some overspray happen just on one side, and I'm sure that's a result of popping the page open. So let's keep going here. It's kind of nice to be able to have the paint not move once you've got it in its position. The results are quite nice here. Also, another thing you're going to want to have handy for this technique is your heat tool, your dryer, because then you can dry each layer. Now, I've got some really nice veining here. I've got you so low because I just want you to be able to see the palette. But see that, I think it's called dendritic veining on here. And then I've also got a thick lip of color. And like I showed you in my sample, that's my favorite. I took my heat tool and dried that to keep it. But since this is still wet, let's reclose it and pull that paint into the fold and see what happens. Okay, so you end up with a totally different look. Now it thinned it out. I am having clouds and then sun and then clouds today, so forgive the lighting. Let's add some of one of my favorites, and here it is. Look at that. It's got these turquoise. It must take a lot of turquoise to make this bronze because the colors keep separating. This I do not like. I'm sure you would have just fine luck with metallic watercolors. You could use the Arteza, I'm not sure how to correctly pronounce it, but there's lots of metallic watercolors on the market. So I'm going to come down here and kind of cover over that tear that I got earlier and see how this comes out. You can rub it with the pads of your fingers and get less of a defined look. Okay, I didn't have enough water here. See how it didn't transfer over, which is fine. You just grab some more water, grab some more paint, and redo that section. I am finding that you have to work fast with this acrylic because it really, I don't know if you can see it, but it's forcing me to peel it apart. So that means that it's setting up very fast. Okay. So let's add some more brown because I really love the blue and the brown together. And I'm going into the high flow sepia again. I kind of want to accent this top edge here. May not have added enough. It just takes a little practice to go back and forth. And when you work on a fresh piece of paper that hasn't had any paint on it yet, you almost have to like condition the paper with the water and the paint. You know what I mean? So that's when it behaves the worst, is the very first time you put your color down on that raw paper. So that's why this technique requires a lot of water. See how it's fighting me to peel apart, and then it didn't quite go even. Also, the acrylics are seeping through, and I don't remember if that happened with the watercolors or not. I'm going to add one more coat of that. So So the higher the flow of acrylic, the more translucent the paint is going to be. It's just a natural deduction. So I'm getting a lot of translucency up here. Let's move to this fluid. This is heavier bodied. And let's see if I can get some more solid coverage. Now this side covered beautifully. And this side it kept coming off of. That might be the glossy paper and the acrylic paint not getting along. See the difference here? I'm sure it's it's very obvious. So there's another drawback to using acrylic paint with this technique. I don't know if I mentioned earlier, I had to retake the beginning of this video a bunch of times. I don't know what my deal is today. I can't talk right for some reason. But I did another video with watercolor later on after I did the blue butterfly. So I'll link both of those and Gerda's in the description box below so that you guys can check those out. I'm gonna set this aside now and let it dry. And then I wanna come back to it after we work on the other sheet, and I wanna see if we can get this up here evened up, or if this is just going to resist the paint forever and ever and ever. Okay? It's definitely fighting me. So let's try this size now. And let's start off with the heavy bodied so that we, for experimentation's sake, can see. I really did water this down a lot. So let's just start with a spot like that. You really do want to start off juicy. Oh my gosh, the paper already tore. So this is the heavy bodied, and I've already got torn paper here. Now the binders in golden are pretty strong. That could be part of this. This is acrylic. It's a completely different chemistry than watercolor. So already this is the most challenging, is the heavy-bodied acrylic. But that's not to say that we can't get amazing results. Let's stick with it for a minute. I'm gonna take another strip of it right there. That's really a watered down, inky spot there. And it did okay. It looks like a thumb to me. It looks like somebody's big old thumb. Thumbs up, like. Hey, speaking of, like this video, will you? It helps me out a bunch with the YouTube algorithm. Bye-bye, thumb. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, I've just had a bit of a struggle getting this video started today, but that question came up and I'm like, oh, I really wanted to do that again. So here it missed a spot. That happens a lot. It's really common. You can just come back in. You can even hit this side. But yeah, ever since I was asked that, it's been on my mind, and I love this art form, so it's really kind of cool to dig into it. You know, this page is already worked pretty well. Let's do a line here. Let's do one more section and see what happens. The more I work with these, see, now that's gorgeous, and then this didn't translate. So there's issues with acrylics. I can't even imagine the headache I would be in store for using like cheap acrylics. I will never even try it because I just know the behavior of, I was a very cheap artist for a very long time, and I know the behavior of cheap acrylics very well. And I know that it would be a massive headache. Okay, but you can get this really cool X-ray look with this. Now, I'm gonna get off the beaten path for a sec. Let's fold another sheet. keep wanting to make my videos shorter, and I keep managing to make them even longer. So there you go. I want to take this black sonnet and do a comparison real quick. Okay, so we saw how this worked out, and look, we lost a lot of detail on this side translating it over. It did not translate well. It's definitely giving me a hard time. I've got beautiful detail on this side, and I lose a lot of it on this side. So let's go ahead and take a clean brush to make an uncontaminated test. And I've just got my little water here. And I need to activate this black paint real quick. Okay, and what I like to do when I do this is I just squirt down my whole palette with water, and then I really start getting into it just to have everything pre-activated. Okay, you know what I'm using, so I've got to set that out of the way. Got to grab another drop of water. See the flow you get already from the watercolor? Okay, now this is very common that it didn't translate exactly perfect on the first run, and that is because it's the first run, like I said. It's the paper soaking in the watercolor for the first time. Look at all the flow I'm getting from this watercolor that I could not get from this here, okay? So big difference already. And now you see how the details of this are not translated over here? Well, let's say you want an absolutely perfect mirror image. With watercolor, look at what happens. You can come in here and reactivate that entire side. Go ahead and give her a rub, and you end up with a totally different look, but it is much more translated. Now, there was clearly more water on this side than this side, but it's darn near identical. So without grabbing more paint, let's try to really even this up here. Also, the paper is not, let me go right here. The paper's not sticking together and fighting me to get it apart. See how easy that came apart? I've got a water issue here. Let me get a little more paint, and let's even this up once and for all. But it's not fighting me like the acrylics, and even the fluid acrylics fought me. Okay, so I'm not going to keep dipping into other colors here with the watercolor just for because this is more of an acrylic test here. And we know that all watercolors work beautifully. Okay, this is for the sake of showing you that watercolors work beautifully, because I think they do. I really don't want to mess with this anymore. It's so beautiful, but let's mess with it some more. You will reach a point where you're in love with a piece, and this artwork is like you'll open it and go, oh, there it is, that's it, and then you're going to want to hit it with your heat tool. Okay. So now I worked this up here and it was really wet, and then this was starting to set up, so it came apart and gave me some grief. So that's why your heat tool is so important with this technique here. For some reason this is not coming out even. It's because it's the first time I'm working this part of the paper. So you get the idea very well. Now let's go back. Today is pure experimentation. I am not looking to come up with a beautiful finished product. I'm just not. Okay, this iridescent bronze color, See down here how it's translating. It's okay, it's pretty, but watercolor translates so much better as far as beauty goes. So let's add, I wanted to try to see if this would take more paint. And now I have no idea what brush is what. All right, we'll just use this one. And let's go ahead and go into the heavier bodied, because that's what we did last time. And see if we can get this to even up here. Now with these acrylics, I already know that because this side is lighter and this side is darker, I think this side's just gonna keep getting darker and darker, and it's never gonna match up. That's my guess. And I guessed right. So this got even darker, and this did not, this area in here that was light did not hold the color. Try one more time. Okay, so there's our answer. This keeps getting more, it's really beautiful because it's more and more rich in color. But once this resisted initially, it did take a little bit more color, but it didn't take the color to the degree of this. And all of this texture I got on this side didn't translate. So for the sake of a very well-versed exercise, let's do one more with the acrylics. We'll give it the fairest chance we can give it, and then we will all know. Great question, Montana. Great question, because I learned a lot due to your question. So cool. You know, you don't have to go out and buy special stuff. I get caught in that trap. My friend Susan and I were just talking about that this morning. How we watch a video and we think we gotta go buy the stuff in the video. Oh my gosh, I gotta do that, I gotta have that. And next thing you know, you got all this stuff and you could have used what you had. And I'm not against buying new supplies by any means, don't get me wrong. But start with what you've got, really, because you might just be so amazed. So I'm going to start with the blue. And of course, I dipped, my water's over here. And when I reach over here, that's what I'm doing. Sorry I don't have it in frame. But I'm really trying to stay super juicy with this. Now I know, based on my past experience, I gotta hurry and get that open. Okay, another problem with the acrylics. The paper is sticking, so I'm having to pry it apart, and when I pry it apart, I'm getting this overspray. And the overspray, because I'm prying it apart, is not landing equally, of course, on both sides. So there's yet another drawback to the acrylics. And if you look underneath here, you can see these lines. So that acrylic already set up. And that could be a pro or a con, depending on what you're trying to do. Let's get this really wet and juicy. And add a little bit more pigment. It is coming together by making it really, really juicy. I mean, you almost have to have this page swimming in water for this to work. Now let's close it. Okay, the more water I put in, the less resistance I'm getting from the paper. But look at this overspray up here. And then look, you've got this water just running everywhere. And this is completely gonna mess with your identical mirror image. Trying to talk to you guys, and my dogs just make it so tough. I apologize for all the barking. Right on cue. Okay, so I do not have an exact mirror image. I've got the layers of acrylic underneath are all, the first coat of blue that I put in here has set up and will not move, and it didn't print identically to begin with, so it's never going to print identically. And I'm sure you can all relate. I do artwork to have fun and create something and have a really fun experience and a magical experience. And as an artist, and everybody watching can relate to this too, you have your moments of frustration. And it's going to happen. It's inevitable because as an artist, you're a scientist. You might not have a chemistry degree. You might not have all of the scientific knowledge that a scientist has, but we are conducting scientific experiments every time we do something, anything artistically related. So I get a lot of value out of a quote unquote fail like this because look at everything we learned today. The acrylics give beautiful texture. They give really beautiful texture, but getting an identical exact print is, in my opinion, impossible. It's impossible to do with acrylics. None of these are identical. This one is probably the best, and it's very close. And if you're glancing at it, yeah, maybe, but look at how light it is right here. There's all kinds of flaws in here, all kinds. And then here we go. Somehow this paper would just not darken up as much as this side, and it's never gonna, because the acrylics, the great thing about watercolor, here I go, over explaining again. I hope I'm not doing that. Anyway, the great thing about watercolor, let's just mess this one up because I'm making a point here and I want to get this point across. You've got this painting. It's dry. It's totally dry. Look at that. Okay, it's rubbing off on my fingers a little bit, but I'm not totally smearing it by doing that. When I come in here and I scrub into this page, I completely alter. Let's scrub into both sides because you really, if you're gonna reactivate that, you gotta kind of hit it with the water. So the beauty of watercolor doing this technique is being able to come in and reactivate those lower layers. That can work as a con, but I much more look at it as a pro. Now look at that. That is an identical area that we just did. Your results, you're gonna have more fun and you're gonna work a lot less hard if you just use watercolors. So this area down here came out identical, but look up here, we've got some differences. So let's just come in and re-wet both sides of this. And this is another pro of watercolor to me because you cannot reactivate those acrylics. Once they're set into this glossy paper, it's a done deal. Look at that. So we completely changed it, but at the same time, we got almost an identical. It's a little bit off right here. We can come in and work that area real quick, and you can just zero in just like that. Look at how uneven the stages of this piece right here went through all of these different points of unevenness. And then we even let it dry almost entirely. And we were able to come back in and get darn near perfect symmetry with the watercolor. So, great question. What a cool experiment today. This is a true treasure hunt. I'm so glad you guys stopped by today and checked this out with me. And you know, it's okay if you don't want a perfect mirror image. It's perfectly fine to use the acrylics, but for me, when I'm doing this technique, I really am setting out for a mirror image. And remember, unlike me, to set up your heat tool so that you have it handy and ready to go, because that tool makes this really fun. You can do a section, fall in love with it, dry it real quick, and then once it's dry, you're free to move on. Just know that you can continue to reactivate, of course. So thank you so much for stopping by today. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I surely invite you to. We're doing all kinds of fun stuff on this channel, and I will see you next time. Have a great day.